Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where moments before the two hosts of this show were talking about our stories and what we're bringing to the table. And in case you do not know what we're bringing to the table, we are bringing history stories that you have not heard in school, for better or for worse. And then we regale each other with the stories,
For better or for worse.
and you are welcome. I'm host number one. I am Theresa, and that.
I'm Angie. I'm host number two.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we are inching towards 100 episodes.
I'm so excited about that.
Is it weird to know that
Listeners,
we're like 96?
is it weird to know we're that consistent?
Only because we record a bulk in advance and then we have like bye weeks where we're just like, hey, sorry, I need to play dead this week. Will
I'm
you?
call I'm calling in deceased again. As it turns out, you can only do that once.
I would literally have calling in dead to life days.
That's amazing.
When it was like, there's a day on the calendar where it's like, anniversary of your college boyfriend and you guys just broke up and the date on the calendar itself gives you anxiety and you just don't want to do the thing. And
Don't want to
so
do that day.
I
Yeah.
would change my voicemail. I would have a friend with me. I would change my voicemail to if you need to get a hold of me, I hope you have so and so's number.
Because that's it. That's all you're getting.
And my phone would be off and we would go do an adventure and I would
I
be
love
gone
that.
from sunrise to sunset.
That's everybody should do that like at least twice a year.
Right?
Yeah, I agree wholly with that.
Sorry, wife and or husband and child. Teresa's dead to you today.
Good day.
She's off with
I'll
her
be your
imaginary
voicemail.
friend. Toodles.
Ta-ta!
I think I'm gonna do that
Yes.
tomorrow. I'm
Oh my
joking. I've got
gosh.
plans tomorrow. I definitely can't. But that is something I would love to do. Um,
I would have been happy to be your voicemail.
but with my luck, I wouldn't change it. And then like 5 months from now, I'd be like,
The hell? Why
called
does
in
Angie keep getting all these
dead?
phone calls?
Yeah.
It's gonna be me telling you missed appointments.
Yeah, it'd be
You're
like, you've got to pick up your prescription. Walgreens is gonna like send it back or put it back on. I don't know what that means, but I think your
the
anti-anxiety meds are important, dude.
the hygienist said you've missed 3 appointments this year. Would you please show up?
Your gyno says it's serious. Call her back.
Please. Okay. Okay, you just reminded me of something. When I first started back at my current position, my coworker that I work in the closest proximity to, that it's safe to say I am the closest to. I had been there for maybe 6 months and I had that yearly appointment, right?
Hmm.
And so I told him, I was like, okay, my appointment's gonna be my lunchtime. I'll be back. Gotta go to the doctor's, blah blah blah. And he says, okay. So I don't think anything of it. Well, when I get back, what, an hour and a half later, whatever, I brought him his lunch and then I sat down and he tried to make some embarrassing quip, but it was really funny, whatever it was. Like that's the moment he learned that I couldn't be embarrassed in this way.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I asked the doctor about that thing on you also, and she says given where its location's at, you can't really just lance it off. It's kind of hanging." And he went, "Oh!" And everybody else in the room lost it. And the guy that was like a vendor or whatever that was standing there with us was like, "Oh my God. Oh my God." And my coworker turned beet red, but not of mortification. He was so delighted that he finally found someone to match his energy. And that's the day we became best friends.
So that's up there with me sending you the most inappropriate meme I've ever found to date of like, I don't know, they will either be friends or I'm gonna get blocked.
And all I gotta say is you are still a really bad veterinarian.
And literally only like two other people might have an inkling of what that would even mean.
Which makes it that much funnier, to be honest.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
The
delete
picture
all of
set,
this.
Yeah, you are. The picture set is still in my mind, like burned in my brain. I cannot remember the other words, but the pictures are there.
Oh, I'll find it. I'll find it. Last time I looked for it, I couldn't, but I'll figure it out.
So that's how we test our friendship. How messed up are you? What's
Yeah.
your Tuesday afternoon look like?
It's like, are you going to talk to your therapist about me, or are you going to talk to your therapist about me?
Just checking, just checking.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so I don't know if you necessarily have been paying attention, and it's fine if you haven't. I'm not going to shoot you and eat you.
She
But
is totally because she's a fan of Terraria, but whatever.
well, I mean, look, we all have our things, but I have been trying to honor um Native American History Month. So I've been
You
on
know,
theme.
I love this for you because I have not been on theme.
No, I know. I could tell.
I have literally been all over the place. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
No, no, no. I mean, like, look, you're gonna remember something or other, and I'm gonna be like, oh, snap, that was this month. But I mean, I just did it to add like a little bit of guide rails to help me manage and navigate my own list. Um,
That's good. I like that.
but I have a real buzzkill of a
A
story. And it's
banger, huh?
well, no, absolute buzzkill. And it's because it's like you hear in passing da 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 da. And you're like, oh yeah, I should look that up. I should figure out what those keywords mean. But you don't
Okay.
necessarily do. Like you just kind of take for granted, okay, that was obviously something bad because of the context in which it was said, but you don't necessarily like go in and learn the deets.
The deep dive.
Yeah.
Like we know
So
surface stuff.
I'm gonna tell you the story of Wounded Knee.
Ooh, okay. I'm here. I'm
Yep.
prepared. I've got my beverage. Let's go.
Okay. So, okay. My sources, history.com, what happened at the Wounded Knee Massacre. Um, Really, okay, so I should have said this one first. There's a book, An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. And then the podcast, The Rest is History, they did a three-part series on the fall of the Sioux, but it's really part of like an 11-point series that they did, like that started from all the way with Custard and all the way down.
Oh, okay.
But I only did the three-part series of the fall of the Sioux. So I
Okay.
tuned in towards the tail end. So, after white settlers are pouring in the Dakota Territory following the 1874 discovery of gold in the Black Hills, I guess I kind of technically touched on this with the Alcatraz one where I talked about
Yeah.
the treaty. Okay.
Yeah, you
Um,
mentioned it. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of like glossed over. I only mentioned like the highlights or the one cool thing to come out of this part. The the whites seized millions of acres of land and they nearly annihilated the bison population.
I'm making the face that I'm making,
Yeah.
and you'll know why later. I'm
W-
sorry I had to bring attention to that,
Wait a
but
minute.
I'm
Wait a minute.
well
Why?
done.
What?
Just as soon as I tell you my story, you're gonna
Is there a
harken back to
weird
that.
tie-in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So they
The
leave.
weirdest tie-in.
All right. The indigenous peoples, their traditional hunting grounds are gone. Their cultures evaporated. And the Lakota, who once roamed as free as the bison on the Great Plains, find themselves basically confined to government reservations. And it's throughout the 1890s that the Lakota are facing a variety of not fun deals. They've got droughts, epidemics, and they're facing like measles, whooping cough, and influenza. And it was weird for me to recognize that whooping cough was more than the disease we're afraid of infants catching, but recognizing we all get the
Yeah.
vaccine, the Tdap, to avoid spreading that to the newborns.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah,
if
that
you
is
haven't gotten your tetanus shot in a while, maybe you should go get your tetanus shot because it includes
this
whooping
is
cough.
this episode brought to you by your county health department.
Yep. Now, okay, so there's a Lakota historian, Donovan Sprague, and he says they were very distraught at this time. Now, he ends up being somebody we should know about because he's the history department head at Sheridan College. During this time, the Lakota have lost a massive amount of land under the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, and many of them were dealing with the recent surrender to the reservation system. Now, this ruled out their ability to do the Sundance, which for the Lakota was the most important religious ceremony. And for them to leave the reservation, they had to have permission to leave.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
Yeah, that they went from sovereign people to, do you have a
I have to
permission
ask to go
slip?
outside.
You need a hall pass.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly what it reminds me of.
right. Now, there was kind of this interesting movement that popped up that kind of swept across the Great Plains. It is kind of referred to as a religious movement, and that is the ghost dance movement. Have you heard about it?
I have. We may have even mentioned it before.
Okay.
I don't
Now,
know a ton. I think I've only heard it in like passing.
the book, The Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, kind of covered it, but because she's talking about the entire history of the United States and only does it in like 300 pages, like everything is said with such brevity that
Right.
I think it could have gotten its own book. But these are things. Now, the ghost dance first appears in Nevada around 1870, and it gains popularity among the Lakota around 1889 when there is a Paiute prophet named, I'm going to butcher this and my apologies, Wovoka. Now, its adherents believed that people participating in the circular dance are really going to usher in this utopian future, right? They're hoping that by participating in this dance, they are going to bring in a cataclysm that's going to wipe out the United States. It's going to eradicate
I like a
the
radinate.
right. So it's going to wipe the white settlers off the map like a angry game of Monopoly coming to its
Flip the
cataclysmic
table
ends.
over. You've collected $200 in Passco way too many times. Table's going.
Yep, we're going to
Agreed.
knock your little dog token over along with all of the hotels you've stacked up on Park Place.
Ian. Whatever.
Monopoly's not here to build families. Let's just be honest.
Monopoly's here to tear them apart.
Now, it's also going to do things like resurrect everything they've lost, their culture, the bison herds. And I'm going to do my best to say bison and not buffalo because buffalo are in Africa, bison are on the plains of the United States. Like they are vastly different creatures. And it's even, according to them, this ghost dance is going to resurrect the dead ancestors.
Okay.
Now, the adherents of this dance are wearing these white muslin shirts, and they believe that the shirts themselves are going to protect them against dangers, including bullets. Now,
Okay.
it's around nearly a third of the Lakota. They joined this messianic movement by the winter of 1890. Sprague says that they see the ghost dance as this panacea, that all of these great transitions that are happening in their lives, they think this new religion is going to offer them something. Now, in the book, In Indigenous Peoples, the United States, the author talks about how the dancers are completely and compulsively dancing in this ritual. And it kind of reminds me of the same fervor they're using that we see in the dancing plague. I will say a big difference, big ass difference is going to be that while they're dancing with the same level of devotion, it does seem voluntary. Whereas the dancing plague was, I don't know why I'm dancing. Miss Trophia really started it, and now I'm dancing too.
Thanks, Miss Sophia. We'll never forgive you.
But they're dancing until the point of collapse. There's reports of even some of them dying mid-dance,
Oh,
but they
wow.
are they're having visions as well. And so they would come up, they would have visions, they would tell their elders, and then they would go back into the dance because they are like, if we keep dancing, we can really usher in everything we want and usher out everything we don't.
So a new age. We're going to bring in a new age.
Yeah, they're doing it.
I
They are
love
committing
this.
to this. Now, as the ghost dance movement spreads, it frightens the whites.
Shocking.
Now, they believe it's a prelude to an armed uprising. Quote, Indians are dancing in the snow and are wild and crazy, said federal agent Daniel F. Royer as he telegrammed the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs that were headquartered in South Dakota's Pine Ridge Reservation in November of 1890. We need protection and we need it now.
Of course you do.
I've got a heavy eye roll there that doesn't really translate to an audio media, but the in the podcast series The Rest is History, the hosts share about how this putz was really playing Chicken Little, how it wasn't frightening at all, and how he was just going through it.
He's just going to be dramatic because he can be.
My goodness grief.
Let's do it. Be as
Yeah.
dramatic as we can be. That's actually really the very white thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, our boy Sprague, who's been, kind of the talking head subject matter expert, he says this is a big problem on reservations because federal agents thought that those who danced were going on the warpath, like the stereotype. I suppose the authorities did think they were crazy, but they weren't.
Well, that's obvious. Okay.
A Lakota Pine Ridge resident later recalled they were only terribly unhappy. I
Hmm.
wonder why.
Shocking. You have to get a hall pass to go down the freaking street.
Yeah. And your main food source has been eradicated, which is a harbinger of death unto itself,
But
assuming you're
gee,
not thinking of it as, total or ecological collapse,
yeah. Nope, I don't know what their problem is. That seems just fine.
right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, but the federal government does what it does and it bans the ghost dance ceremonies because that's going to stop it.
Yep.
And
Last time
then,
I checked, it
yeah,
works.
all you have to do is say, don't do that. And people stop
Stop
doing
it.
drugs. I got the pencil in
Stop it.
sixth grade that said, don't do drugs. And that never happened. Look, we
See?
got the
It
pencils.
works. And the sticker. It's the stickers
You know what? Yeah. It was the little plastic badge that, you know,
that said dare.
right.
Yep.
hmm Okay, so they banned the ghost dance, which I just said, and they mobilized the largest military deployment since the Civil War.
Yep. That checks.
You
Let's
know
be
what?
honest.
We're consistent. And
We're
then
nothing if not consistent, right?
General Nelson Miles, he arrives on the prairie with part of the 7th Cavalry, which had been annihilated at the Battle of Bighorn 14 years earlier, and then they order the arrest of the tribal leaders suspected of promoting the ghost dance movement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're calling up the rabble
D
rousers, even though
They're
they
doing
don't
what they do
know.
best.
Right. It's like, we can't prove you did it, but you're going to need to step into the cell anyhow.
Come
We got
on.
a we got a pair of matching bracelets for you.
No, one for each wrist.
Now,
I
it's
would not
around,
do well in prison. I just need to say that.
yeah, I would probably do better than I think, and that doesn't sound good to admit it loud, but I should probably not try to get in there anyhow.
You know? Yeah. But live your truth.
It sounds worse saying it aloud, but truth is, I like structure.
I do great with three hots and a cot.
Right? You know what? There's a social hierarchy. I just need to know I'm at the bottom and move right along.
Call it good.
December 15th at 4 a.m., there's a group of Lakota who are colloquially called the Metal Breasts, and they are basically Lakota who have turned to law enforcement.
Oh, okay. That
So
makes
they're
sense for the
policing their own.
name.
Now, they have like the full term that they describe themselves in Lakota that translates to metal breasts. I'm not even going to try to butcher it because I believe in some form of self-dignity.
So some sort of self-respect.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but it's here now, so filters engaged. Now,
I'm so proud of you. You
it,
okay?
I mean, I'm a couple glasses of wine in. Let's keep going.
I'm here for it.
So the Lakota who they've come to take Chief Sitting Bull into custody, believing that he's an instigator among these ghost dancers. And they decide 4 a.m., great time to come in and say, "Hi, would you like to step into this back room with us?" They
The
break into
paddy
his,
wagon.
yep, he's buck naked because 4 a.m.
Good for him.
and he's with one of his wives. Don't know how many, don't know the setup, not my biz.
I don't know why that matters to me, but like, how many did he have?
I mean, it just said one of his wives, and I just didn't feel like doing a full roll call.
Okay, I'll let it pass, but
He's
don't
the
think I won't
chief.
Google it later. He can have as many wives as he wants. Get it,
I
buddy?
mean, look, it's one wife in today's money.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good for him.
Now, because again, buck ass naked, and he comes in and he makes the quip of like, what, you're gonna take me here like this? Can I at least have my wife go get me some clothes? Because apparently his clothes are in another cabin. Again, I don't know the setup, but I have questions.
Okay, yeah. I too have questions now. Thanks. I was just imagining he was in his own cabin where his own clothes are.
And I can't imagine just drifting from cabin to cabin, air
If
drying.
he has multiple wives,
You would need multiple cabins if you're going to have multiple wives. I'm just saying, I don't want everybody cycling under the same roof.
okay, carry on.
You're welcome. You have sons. I've got a daughter.
On this week's episode of therapy, we talk about Sitting Bull.
So he requests his wife to go get him some clothes from another cabin. And as he's getting dressed, he's got a son who some sources say are 15, or the son is 15 years old. Now,
Okay.
his son calls him out for not fighting and basically going peaceably. It should be noted that Sitting Bull is the last generation that fought. And so his son has grown up on all of these stories about how you fight for your rights, how you stand up for
Right.
yourself, how like how
Do the
you do the
things.
things. You could become a war
Yeah.
chief because you are waging war, like on the other tribes.
Yeah.
Now, so when his son calls him out for basically going peaceably, this causes all hell to break loose.
I can imagine.
Sitting Bull is killed.
Ugh, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Now, his son is crawling away after the battle past literal uncles of his. Because again, everybody knows everybody and half of the team is related. And he asks his uncles not to attack him. They did not show mercy.
I hate this. I hate this so much.
And the podcast series that I was talking about, The Rest is History, they go into depth. So if you want to know the things I'm glossing over, have at it. If it's good enough to know that it didn't end well, you're welcome.
Okay.
Um, the military puts out a warrant for the arrest of Sitting Bull's half brother, Chief Spotted Elk, who's also sometimes called Chief Bigfoot. I've got a clear personal favorite.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Now, Spotted Elk flees to Standing Rock with a band of Lakota for the Pine Ridge Reservation, and that's more than 200 miles away at the literal opposite end of the state. And it's not until the 28th of December that the U.S. Cavalry catches up with Spotted Elk and his group of mostly elders, women, and children near the banks of the Wounded Knee Creek, which winds through prairies in the Badlands of the southwest of South Dakota. Now, the American forces arrested Spotted Elk, who was too ill with pneumonia to sit up, let alone walk, and they positioned their Hotchkiss guns on the rise overlooking the Lakota camp. So this
Okay.
automatically is like old people, women, children, their leader
And
can't
sick.
can't even sit up. This should be a slam dunk, lay down, just walk in, do your dues, and like extract. We don't need to overinvest anything.
Or we just turn around and walk away and say, "Sir, we never found them."
Yeah, we don't know what you're on about. Like the track's ended. They just
That's,
disappeared.
yeah,
Native American
right.
magic, if you will. Whatever lie you've got to tell.
The shaman was there, sir. I
I
don't.
mean, the number of things we hear about this political party caused a hurricane or that sexual
Yes,
orientation can manifest weather phenomenon. Like we don't need to we if that's like a 2000s thing that we can hear on the news, then who among us can say what they're saying in the late 1800s?
that's all I'm saying. All I'm saying.
Witchcraft was on the table and we chose violence.
I mean, to be fair,
You're right. That was probably not the best analogy because we will always choose violence when witchcraft is on the table.
yeah, you big silly goose.
We should have just stuck with religious and political differences. But
Witchcraft.
yeah. So tempers are flaring, tensions are flaring, and
No.
somebody blew a bugle and let me have you guess it was not an indigenous human. And
Was it a panicking white man? Oh no.
survey says it's always a panicking white man.
Battle of Cransby's looking at you, buddy.
I mean, but there were white dudes on both sides.
Yeah, but it was a bugle and a panicking white man that caused it.
You're not wrong. So, December 29th, the bugle goes off. The American soldiers mount their horses and they surround the Lakota. And a medicine man who started to perform the gross dance cries out, "Do not fear, but let your hearts be strong. Many soldiers are about us and have many bullets, but I assure you their bullets cannot penetrate us because they're wearing the muslin shirts that they believed were
They-
bulletproof."
right, right.
And he implores the heavens to scatter the soldiers like the dust that he throws into the air. The cavalry, however, they go from teepee to teepee, seizing axes, rifles, and other weapons. And so,
This checks.
okay, not the best, but these guns are the expensive or second most expensive item that these people own. If they own a
Right,
horse, it could be horse then gun, gun then horse, depends on the horse, depends on the rifle. I
right.
don't price these things. And in the podcast series, they talk about how there's a deaf man holding his gun who doesn't understand what's happening because
Because he's
he
deaf?
literally didn't hear it. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And soldier tries to take his gun from him and the gun goes off.
Ugh.
And within seconds, the American soldiers launch into a hailstorm of bullets from their rifles, revolvers, and then those rapid fire Hotchkiss guns that are, on the rise looking into the camp.
How nice.
And those guns tear through the Lakota.
We had a chance to walk away and we didn't take it.
Yeah.
I'm so mad right now.
There's more. This is why you're going last.
I got you, babe.
I know you do. So Spotted Elk is shot and he's laying on the ground, and boys who were only a moment before were playing leapfrog are mowed down. Through the dust and the smoke, women and children are diving for cover in a ravine, and a cavalryman cries out, "Remember Custer," as soldiers executed the defenseless at point blank range.
Good Lord. Because it wasn't enough that we were firing on them from the hills.
The next line is going to be one that I never want to read again, but will probably. When the shooting stopped hours later, bodies were strewn into the gulch. Hours, hours later. Some were
I
breathing,
can't
most were not.
I can't imagine there were that many Lakota in there to begin with that we need to continue to fire for hours, let
Yeah.
alone period.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Victims who had been hunted down while trying to flee were found 3 miles away. Some had been stripped of their sacred certs as macabre souvenirs. At least 150 Lakota, but historians like Sprague put the number as literally twice as high. They're saying around 300 were killed, along with 25 American soldiers. The American soldiers are struck down basically by friendly fire because these idiots are in a circle when they start firing. And so they're
Firing,
firing at
right.
each other.
Because we're not smart. Yeah, well, yeah.
Two-thirds of
Good
the
Lord.
victim were women and children.
And the rest were elders
Yeah.
for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Ugh, that's devastating.
Again, there's a lot more depth I could go into. There's a lot of detail about this. I'm not because A, we're not a 3, 4 part series thing. Two, the details are out there. Get them. Should you have the ability to go get them? I want to honor the audience we have, not the one we want,
That's intense.
because it's dark. It goes really dark.
Do you need a hug?
I've had a couple glasses of wine. My husband can do a killer Elmo impression that is not necessarily the most savory.
I don't know, it was perfect.
I mean, it was perfect. Hearing him do a drunken Elmo is fantastical, but it won't be on TV
He's,
anytime soon.
he's not going to do America's Got Talent with
He shouldn't. I don't know if I want to be popular for that.
I don't know if I want to be known as being the woman that's married to the man that can be drunk Elmo.
I mean, because trust me, he tries to throw on the seduction sauce with that, and it does not do the things he's hoping for.
God bless him.
hmm but anyhow, back to Wounded Knee. The dead were carried to a nearby Episcopal church, and they're laid in 2 rows underneath festive wreaths and other Christmas decorations.
I hate
Eh,
that the most.
Yeah, because it's not even their religion.
Yeah. And okay, not okay, so for so many reasons, but one, it's not their religion, and two, that's not the heart of Christianity.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm so okay.
Days later, a burial party arrives, dug a pit, and dumped the frozen bodies in a mass grave. And then Sprague says to add insult to injury, some of the survivors were taken to Fort Sheridan in Illinois to be imprisoned for being at Wounded Knee.
I was super planning on that today, you know?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I was just gonna be there.
And that's until William Buffalo Bill Cody took custody of them for inclusion in his Wild West show because
Ugh, of
their sentences were commuted should they do the show
course.
and
Please
reenact
tell me.
the battle in quotation marks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's no redemption here. I
No,
was
no,
okay.
no. We're gonna white it out until the end.
Perfect.
Yeah. hmm Now, Miles, who wasn't present in Wounded Knee, calls the carnage the most abominable criminal military blunder and a horrible massacre of women and children. The U.S. Army awarded the Medal of Honor its highest commendation to 20 members of the 7th Cavalry who participated in the bloodbath, though. So that happened.
Can we take him back?
It would be posthumous now, but I'm not
I mean,
opposed.
obviously it'd be posthumous now, but they wow. Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
Black Elk, who was a survivor, he says, when I look back from this high hill of my old age, and he's saying this in 1931, I can still see the butchered women and children lying heaped and scattered along the crooked gulch as plain as I saw them with eyes still young. And I can see something else died there in the bloody mud and is buried in the blizzard. A people's dream died there. And this wasn't the last time blood flowed at the Wounded Knee Creek. February of 1973, activists of the American Indian movement seized and occupied the site for 71 days to protest the U.S. government's mistreatment of Native Americans. And this standoff resulted in the deaths of two of them.
Right. Because even in the 70s, we can't figure this out.
No, no.
That that checks.
Yeah. And I had
Cool.
heard Wounded Knee and had like touch points, knew that it was both, I knew that it was recent, thought that it was old, conflated it somehow, and then went in and went, it's both. It's both.
It happened twice, not just once.
But I will
Awesome.
say the good thing is when we think about history and how it's oftentimes the victors who write it.
Yeah.
This is one of those instances we don't remember the battle at Wounded Knee. It's the massacre.
So the implication here is then that the victims got to write the history on this one.
Exactly. And so this is
I
one of
do appreciate that.
those moments that we have this rare shining beacon of we're not recording the whole wrong side.
Yeah, that's true. I do appreciate that.
So not the best by any means, but like I was texting, I was like, I don't have a good story, but I have a story that needs to be told.
You have a good story and needs to be told for the right reasons. So you're not wrong.
Yeah. And I think we
You
all need to have that touch point and go, oh yes, Wounded Knee, the two-time event that was not good either time.
The remix was no better than the original on this one.
But it's still a song you need to hear.
Yeah. Wow. I thought it went so different than that.
See what I mean? Where it's like you hear it and you're like, oh, I maybe know it.
Yeah, nope. That checks. Though because white man wrote the history we're taught at school.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right then. I don't know what to do.
I mean, sharp segue, sharp right
Can
turn.
well, I'm gonna tell you that my story is vastly different.
Thank
Uh
goodness.
but it has some
Bison?
continuity in a weird way. I'll get there.
Okay. I got excited.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm not going to tell you the title of my sources
I'll
as
take my
yet, but I
headphones
will tell
off.
you.
No, tell me the sources,
Okay.
get the side. That way the future Teresa who edits this will get the benefit. So
Okay, I'll take
just
your headphones off.
flap your hand when you're
Okay.
ready.
All right. My first source is called How the U.S. Almost Became a Nation of Hippo Ranchers. It's a SmithsonianMag.com article by Shoshi Parks from May of 23. My next source is an article by Greg Miller from December of 2013 in Wired Magazine, The Crazy Indigenous Plan to Bring Hippopotamus Ranching to America. And lastly, the Atavist magazine, an article by John Moallem called American Hippopotamus.
All right.
Just for posterity, I'll tell you.
Mhm.
Smithsonian, Wired, and the Atavist magazine.
So this is just so I can't be like Reddit, bathroom wall,
Yeah,
note found
exactly.
in pockets, not even in my
Um,
handwriting.
Might have put this together with psychopath letters. Unclear.
I'm
I'm gonna
telepathetic.
I'm gonna start my story off with a fun fact from the Smithsonian.
Okay.
Between 1891 and 1902, the country welcomed 1,280 reindeer from Russia, allowing the long-legged ungulates to fill the vacancy left by Alaska's
Diminishing?
diminishing, good Lord, that was so hard, left by Alaska's diminishing native caribou herds.
Now, wait a minute, wait a minute. Whenever you say like the US, I assume they're coming to Missouri. But I'm assuming, because you said from Russia, and I'm like, that's a weird thing. But I'm assuming they're literally just going over the Bering Strait
I don't know how they got here. I just know that we got 1,200 reindeer from
in
Russia
Alaska.
to go to Alaska to fill the
Okay.
vacancy left by the caribou herds.
But Alaska and Russia are literally like
It's
neighbor
touching,
neighbors.
right? I'm
Yeah.
going to assume they came via the Bering Straits, but that is information I didn't look up.
Okay. I'm just
Um,
assuming they didn't somehow go through the Panama Canal for additional questions.
they took a world tour. Um, Around 1910, 20,000 reindeer were confidently striding across the Alaskan territory's frozen tundra. So I think that's just kind of a fun fact that will tie in later. But so it's worth to say my story is not about reindeer, but that is, like I said, a fun fact to share. Um, so let's just dive in. In the early years of the last century, like between 1900 and 1910, those years, America
Okay.
faces a couple of rather large problems. The first, and I'll be honest, it was the last thing I thought I'd say today, was a massive invasion of a particular plant to the south, especially the South's waterways. So we need some context.
Okay.
1884, there's this event. It's called the North American Debut. It's at the Cotton States Exposition in New Orleans. At the debut, this lovely little purple flower called the water hyacinth is dazzling the audience. The fair organizers are saying this Amazonian plant, it's going to be the next big thing. It's going to be all the decorative ornament, my God.
Ornamentation.
Yes, in your gardening. And they're handing them out to like literally everyone.
And it's an invasive species.
This is bad news for the South because Um, the plant, quote, spread like a virus, first in Louisiana and then to Florida. Within 20 years, it had taken over waterways across the South, threatening long established trade routes. So,
Oh, white people.
it's doing their best. Of course, people are paying the consequences of this, and they're trying desperately to halt the hyacinth growth. They're breaking the plants apart, they're dredging them up from the riverbanks and the beds. They're soaking them in gas, lighting them on fire, and much like our sense of humor, the hyacinths, they not only survive, but they thrive.
We love gas.
You're welcome. Now, while the southern states, they're sort of fighting this battle against this plant, um, it basically started with itself, right? Like they're handing it out. They did this to themselves. But here we go. The country as a whole is dealing with a completely different and dare I say slightly more grim reality. We have all but run out of meat. So up to this point in American history, and I'm sure there's a side of the story that says this isn't 100% accurate, but up to this point in American history, meat has been easily accessible for anybody as far as like the strata of classes. Like you could be
Okay.
low class, you could be high class, but you could always get meat up to this point. And when I say this after hearing your story, I'm sure that's very different from stories we might hear from our indigenous people groups, because I'm sure their food rations are probably highly regulated, if
Yeah,
I had to
not
guess by this
not
point.
well.
Yeah. So take that thinking about more of our urbanized population. So like I said, we've all but run out of meat. And one thing we know for sure about Americans, and most of us are probably not proud of this, but we are mass consumers, and it has always been the case for us. By 1910, we had pillaged our way through so many of the country's natural resources, including the animals that bear meat, coupled with a continuation of mass immigration, it that is obviously still taking place, right? So at this point, we're looking for new ways to feed the masses. Um, Now, for posterity, it must be said that according to Catherine McNear, she's a historian at Portland State University, she
Oh,
says, quote, the meat packers blame the grain prices and cattle shortages. The butchers blamed the meat packers, and most everyone else blamed the Beef Trust, a nickname given to the nation's largest meat packing companies, for
wait, they're
conspiring.
blaming the packers, like the meat packers, like you're just not putting enough on the truck?
Yeah, it's just a circle of blame. They're basically saying the meat packers are conspiring to profit at their expense. And honestly, when I read that, it gave me the exact same feeling as the lead up to the Great Maple Syrup Heist I covered. I think it was back in episode 48, where like everybody's just blaming everybody else, but it was the super pack of maple people.
Which
Um,
honestly is a phrase we never suspected.
didn't see it coming. But trust, there's no heist or drug money involved in this story, but I promise you, you're not going to see the next part coming. So it's March 24th of 1910. Louisiana Representative Robert F. Broussard is standing before the House Committee on Agriculture to lay the details out of his plan to save America. It's House Resolution number 23261. It's called. Are you ready for this?
I'm not, but you're gonna lay it on me.
I am. It's called the American Hippo Bill. Yep.
I got
She's making
nothing.
that fish
I
face
got
where the mouth just
nothing.
opens and
Where
closes.
the smart aleck opened and could not engage.
Yeah, my brain did the same thing. So Broussard believes this will solve both the problems facing his constituents, the hyacinth invasion and the meat shortage. Now for funsies,
Wait a minute.
we're
Has
gonna
he never met a hippo? Does he not recognize that these are homicidal maniacs that dwell in water and can run super fast on land and are just going to murk people
literal
on
tanks.
sight for reasons?
Yeah, well, we'll get there. Um, but before we get there, I gotta introduce some more characters at play here. Because it wasn't just Mr. Broussard. There is a gentleman by the name of William Newton Irwin. He is a researcher at the Department of Agriculture.
Any
He,
relation to Steve?
no, it's IR.
Oh, wait. Steve Irwin was IR?
I thought he's ER.
Pretty sure IR.
Well, we'll look it up. But
Okay.
at present, I don't know. So we'll go with a solid I don't know. He is a researcher at the Department of Agriculture, and he believes it is, quote, easily possible to add 1 million tons of meat a year to our supply. John Muallim, writing for the Advis article, says he, quote, appears to have spent his career championing ideas that were simultaneously perfectly logical and extravagantly bizarre.
I mean, who
Um,
among us?
right? Irwin would say that the hippo had a taste like a combination of pork and beef. So do with that information what you will. Not something I needed to know, but now I
I
do.
mean, knowing that what could hurt me might be tasty in a delicious burger.
Yeah, you got that.
This is how I die. Carry on.
I'm gonna get that hippo. So then also on his team is a gentleman by the name of Frederick Russell Burnham. Now, he is described as a charismatic American. He's a military scout who saw the potential of hippo farming while he was stationed in Africa during the Second
Hippo
Boer Wars.
farming?
Hippo farming, yeah. And I just gotta say this guy is my new hero. Picture it. Think like Alan Quartermain, like that romantic era of great legends and storytelling of larger than life characters.
Right.
Frederick Russell Burnham has these bright, piercing blue eyes, and they said that when he looked at you, he like looked right through you and past you. People said that he looked like he was always watching the ocean or the plains, like he could see for days and was always
So
busy looking.
he's just a cult leader, is what it sounds like.
It could be. And he is rather larger than life at a whole 5'4". Um, and I love that for myself. It
I'm
makes
about
me
to
laugh
say,
so
like,
hard.
I'm sorry, you're not big enough to ride this ride, Mr. Cult Leader. Get back in the line.
You must be this tall.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Rounding out the group is a South African army captain who would later become a German spy by the name of Fritz Joubert Duque. Now,
Um,
he was,
None of these words belong in the sentences that you're using them in, Angie.
you remember when I said to you that I didn't create a word salad, I made a milkshake.
No lies are detected,
Okay. So,
but this is
Fritz,
up there with dreams. The ones that don't make sense have a clear beginning, middle, end.
dude, yeah, no, this whole thing is a fever dream, I'm telling you. Fritz Joubert Duque was born in Africa and he's raised on hippo. He is quoted as saying, I just want to call your attention to the vigorous race of Dutchmen that lived on hippopotamus during the Boer War. Um, so here's the thing. These three guys have a plan, and they've even got a team together that will help go scout and bring back hippos. So just keep that in your noodle noggin. Basically, if the bill passes, it is said that no American, whatever their socioeconomic status, would ever have to eat a meatless meal again. $250,000 in their money, so today's money would be roughly about 8 million, would be able to turn America's unoccupied and unused government lands into a proverbial free-range market that would be filled with wild and domestic animals from around the world.
What could
Yep.
go wrong, she says.
Not a thing, according to these guys, because check it out. Immediately signing on to the plan was, you guessed it, former President Theodore Roosevelt.
I knew it. The bull
He
moose
is
had to be in on this.
right. He had to have his hand in this one. He is now spending his post-White House years touring the country and captivating enthralled audiences with photos of his African hunting safaris. And he pledges to give Broussard his full support on the matters. Um, but there is still some question as to what the American people would think and whether or not they would actually take to it. Newspapers across the country had some thoughts in the days after the congressional hearing. The Daily Arizona Silver Belt said, quote, all we have to do to be saved from vegetarianism, as if it's like the worst thing on the planet, is to cultivate a taste for hippopotamus, rhinoceros, camel, eland, springbok, dik-dik, giraffe, and other African animals. Perhaps these animals, some of them at least, are not so bad as they sound. In
I
North
mean,
Dakota,
look, I mean, you lost me at Dick Dick. I know that it's an adorable little mammal, but the thing is, I'm not going to say it's on the table
yeah, neither am I. Neither's giraffe.
for
Like, what part do you
different
even eat?
reasons.
Completely
There's
different
just going to be
reasons.
giggles if I'd be like, you haven't
Come
eaten
get
your
your dick,
Dick
dick, and
Dick.
cheese. Get it together, people. Yeah, nope. Uh, in Dakota, the Evening Times reporter William Henderson said, quote, Great Britain has eaten the Australian kangaroo and likes him. Horse flesh is a staple in continental Europe, and the people of Central America eat the lizard. Why cannot Americans absorb the hippopotamus? Oh, I don't know.
Because the horse isn't trying to run you down and put you off the census list with prejudice.
You would think that would cross somebody's mind. The Osala Evening Standard tells Florida, seriously, we need every additional species that is possible to secure. And you can imagine that there are some questions on the Agricultural Committee, Congressional Committee's board, right? Like, how are they kept? Will they stay in their fences? Will the flowers be a good diet for them? Because the idea is, right, that these
No,
flowers, they've
no, no,
invaded the
no.
waterways, let's give them a cow to eat.
I mean, here's the deal. I don't know if you've studied American history, but as we've learned from, say, I don't know, the pig war, we can't make a fence that surrounds the animals to keep them enclosed.
These guys didn't read about the pig war because all of these, and I'm sure a lot more questions were answered with a very enthusiastic yes. Irwin, the gentleman I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
didn't actually know all that much about hippos. Clearly, because him and Broussard said things like, yeah, hippos would be easily tamed. They could totally be fenced in. They love to sit on 5 or 6 acres of waterfront farms. Yes, hippos would relish dining out on the water hyacinths. Um, it's worth noting that those plants, they grow to a mass of 30 to 50 tons per acre. So they're massive.
Hmm.
But Irwin thought that they could be their primary food source. Um,
But they didn't take it to, I don't know, a zoo to see if it was even going to be consumed. This seems
okay,
like a
well,
simple test.
you would think here's the problem. This flower is like 95% water, which is like no bueno for the hippos. But it would be awesome if we humans could figure out how to operate it. Because basically, the amount of water intake coming from these flowers, if they were to eat them, would have caused the hippo's body, specifically its kidneys, to work so hard that they lose weight and gain very little to no nutritional value for themselves.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
So,
good.
right. The Smithsonian says, quote, hippos may not spend much time while eating in the water, but they do poop prolifically. An
Me
activity
too,
that
hippo.
creates an ecological threat as weighty as the one Broussard was trying to solve in the first place. Hippo waste adds to water's nutritional load, propelling the overgrowth of algae while simultaneously killing native plants and fish. For funsies, I
Uh,
don't have it in my story, but the Smithsonian article talks about how um Escobar, the drug lord,
yeah. He had
he
like
had
all of
hippos.
his hippos. He's got cocaine hippos.
Uh-huh, yeah, and it talked about what they did to the waterways where they reside. And so that's just a fun little, like, if you want to go read the article, that it's got some fun facts in there. Um, so it, this isn't gonna work. And I don't know if like the congregational or the congressional committee like thinks this through and just shelves it, but the basic gist is they turn it down that year. They shelf it, like I said.
Okay, this is
And
good because I swear to you, we moved through a lot of legislation that should have had a couple, what?
pardon, I have a question. Did we they try again, Broussard and his crew, but no headway is ever really made. World War One starts, they
Oh,
start
thank
this
goodness. A
this endeavor.
distraction.
Right? They started this endeavor in 1910. So between 1910 and World War One starting, Broussard, he also still has other political priorities like getting reelected, which he did, but he would die of a long illness only a few short years later in 1918. But with World War One starting, by this time, Americans are like fully capable of dealing with the hardship of not having access to a ton of meat. Like they quickly learned to go without, and the idea is never really brought up again. I venture to assume it's because Broussard, who was obviously like the front runner on this, passes away. But I love this comment from the Smithsonian. Neither the committee nor the bill's supporters addressed the irony of using one invasive species to destroy another.
Truth.
Right?
Truth.
And if you're curious, as I was, more than a century later, the water hyacinth, the one that they were trying to chew up, is still a menace for southern waterways. In fact, between 1975 and 2013, Louisiana spent $124 million on efforts to keep it at bay.
But wait a minute. How did we get there from Russian caribou?
Because over the years of American history, animals have been introduced into American ecology that weren't previously
Oh,
there. And
okay.
it's a fun way to say that worked. That one worked. Bringing in the Russian reindeer didn't have the backlash as would an armada of hippos, if you will.
Armada, I think, is the correct term. I'm not going to Google it, but that feels right.
It feels right to me. Um, as I said, Bouchard died and it was shelved, and then the war happens. But I do have a couple of other fun comments about the event, if you will. Lippincott's monthly magazine was stirred by the promise. This animal, homely as a steamroller, is the embodiment of salvation.
Homely as a steamroller. I know people like that.
It's my favorite new phrase. I love it so, so much. Um, another comment, and I love this part. So in the Atavist article written by John Muallen, he describes this moment. One agricultural department official, who I can only assume is Irwin, but he doesn't announce it in the article, officially estimated that an armada of free-range hippos sent moping through the bayous of Florida, Mississippi, and Louisiana would easily yield 1 million tons of meat a year. And I just loved that he didn't include his name there, so we're left to assume that maybe somebody else said it, but it's clearly Irwin.
But
Like,
the problem is, among that meat is going to be Floridians.
and like everybody else, because they're
Right.
not going to stay fenced in. Um, we didn't think about that. And anyway, I've got some pictures.
I'm here for it. And please say
Okay.
it's just screenshots of when the last time you watched Fantasia.
Should have been. Um, Here is, I don't know if you can see it well. It's like an ad. Will the meat trust force us to this? Um,
It is an elephant upside, or not elephant, a hippo-ish upside down on a table with like garland. It's a
I think
big
it's meant to
table.
be like a dressed pig, like you know how they for banquets and stuff. I think it's meant to look like that, but it's a hippo.
I mean, this is kind of incredible. I'm not going to kid. Hippopotami steak, odd lizard entree, hashes of horse and dog, bat pot pie, roasts of queer bounding wallaby of Australian wilds. Men eat them all.
Okay. So,
Is that
that's
supposed to be a hippo skeleton underneath?
I think so. You're referring to this image
Oh,
of
wait, no, it says
them
something
like on
about
stakes.
lizard, dried,
Oh, I can't.
hard to
Let's
see
see.
lizard.
Oh, I think it says dried Chinese lizard.
Okay. Weird.
Apparently, it was a delicacy.
Weird.
Okay, so there's that image. And then just for funsies, I thought I would show you this is a scouting party for one of Roosevelt's safaris.
I can't make out any of their faces, but I will
I don't
tell
think you're
you,
meant to.
I swear most of them have large handlebar mustaches that I can't see.
Underneath
Yeah, like
the
I'm left
hats.
with the impression that the shadows that I can't make out their chins are just sweeping mustaches.
I think you're right. What I saw this picture and I was so delighted by it that I was like, yes, this is going in. I do not believe any of the men in this photo are the men from the story, but since Roosevelt was showing the world his photos, I thought it would be fun to share because he was the big name backing this. And it makes me wonder how many things come across the president's desk that we never hear about. But like, at what point did he get a letter in the mail going, I would like to introduce hippos to American ecology and see what happens? It just, I've
Right?
been laughing nonstop about this because human stupidity knows no bounds. And
I
this one is a
mean,
winner.
you're not wrong. This is incredible. I will give you that. This is the palate cleanser I was hoping for.
You're welcome. I have been sitting on that for weeks. You have no idea how hard it has been to keep my mouth shut and not drop hippo jokes left and right. And to be honest, one of the things I loved most about this story is reading all of the ways the hippos were described, uh, especially the homely fireplace. Like, what?
The homely fireplace?
Oh,
The homely
so
steamroller.
there's the homely steamroller, and then there was another one that I didn't put in my notes, but they refer to it a hippo as a smiling fireplace. You know the pot, the fire kitchen, the oh God, what were they called?
Wait, this really
Like
helps if you know all the words.
I know, I just lost the name. They were like pot belly stoves.
Okay.
So it's described as a pot belly stove with a smile. And
Me
that
too.
just makes me laugh. That just makes me laugh so hard. And I would have loved to have been in that congressional hearing.
Oh my gosh. So there was one time, kiddo was a toddler. We went to the Oregon Zoo. Okay. So
Okay.
we're there. It's a crowded day. We're at the hippo place, or they had, I think they had hippos. I think this was, maybe it wasn't hippo. There were, I want to say hippos, but now I'm saying that out loud. And it doesn't, I don't think there were hippos, but anyhow, I made hippo. I'm gonna say hippos for the story. Hippos. And Ani just says, wow, she's so big. And I look to go, yeah, isn't she? Again, hippo exhibit. And to my chagrin, a very large, very animated woman in front of me pivots on her heels to, I can only assume, read me the riot act, and then sees Kiddo and I clearly engaged with the animal in the exhibit, and then like understand that maybe it wasn't about her, and then like walk off and have me go, I almost got my ass handed to me
By accident, and I didn't even do it this time.
this time.
Yeah.
And I later told husband, and he nearly buckled. He was laughing so hard.
Oh, well, I mean,
I mean,
yeah.
because this looked rather intense. Because I made like you looked at the hippo, then realized I was getting angry glare, look, and then go, I'm gonna die.
This is how I go out.
Yeah. And then it was like lots of uncomfortable movement. She cleared out, and then I just kind of went, that was closer than I would have liked it to be.
We have to go now. Would you like an
Yeah.
ice cream?
That isn't how the fortune teller said I would go.
Wild. What a set of stories we had this day. Holy beans.
So if you've liked this
Truth.
story and you're thinking, what the heck is happening next week? We don't know. Your guess is literally as good as ours. Rate, review, subscribe, and really go hunt down your big David Bowie fan and say that they need to listen to this podcast because they really do.
Yeah, they should.
And on that note, goodbye.
Bye.